Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Um, I want to give you some facts. These are facts. Number one, the Palestinian people either are a part of Hamas themselves or they support Hamas. That's a fact. I'm going to let that sink in. Fact number two, all Jews are either Zionists themselves or they support Zionism. I'm going to let that one sink in as well. I'm going to give you another fact. All black males have some level of criminality connected to them. They've either been to jail or they're on their way to jail or they've been in the system or they are involved in some type of criminal behavior. Anyone who supports Palestinians supports Hamas. That's a fact. If you support Palestinians, you support Hamas. If you do not support Israel, you're anti Semitic. That's a fact. Do you guys see where I'm going with this? How utterly ridiculous everything that I just said sounded. Everything that I said to up to this point is 100% incorrect. Where'd I get it from? Got it from the media. The majority, I'm under the belief that the majority of people, the 320 some odd million people, the majority are media educated. They get their information from news outlets, from print, or from the well-known news outlets. Your CNN, your MSNBC, your Fox News, CBS, NBC, the whole nine. They get their information from them. Have you ever asked yourself who owns them? Have you ever asked yourself who owns media? Print, that which is on TV, radio stations, the whole nine. Let's go through some of this. I want you to understand this media thing. There are 6 major corporations that control all of media virtually. There are some independent media outlets via the internet and other than that, but the majority of mass media is controlled by 6 companies. The first company is called National Amusements. The owner is Sumner Redstone. He's worth $4.6 billion. Under his control, I'm just going to read a few of them because, I wish I was so tech savvy that I knew how to superimpose what I'm looking at on my computer screen onto the screen that I'm using to film this video, or how to put it screen in screen. If somebody knows how to do that, please let me know, so that you can see the extent of control that these companies have. This National Amusements, and again, I'm not going to name all of them. They own BET. They own HD Net Movies. They own Flicks, CMT, Epix, MTV, MTV Films, Nick Jr., Nickelodeon, Nick Music, Nick Tones, CW, Showtime, Viacom, VH1, CBS, CBS News, Showcase Cinemas, where you go watch your movies, CBS Films, CBS Sports, and a bunch of other ones. In print, they own 4 of the major newspaper outlets. Video games, they own CBS Games. Internet, they own CBS Interactive, Lost FM, TV Guide, TV.com, and 24/7 Sports, and several other ones. That's one company. That's one company. The next one is Disney. CEO is Bob Iger. He's worth $44.9 million. Actually, that's his annual salary. Correction. That's the man's annual salary. $44.9 million annually. What does he own? What does his company own? And again, I'm looking at maybe 100 companies or 100 outlets maybe that fall under Disney. We're talking A&E, A&E Networks, A&E Studios, ABC, Disney, ABC Television Group, ABC Family, ABC News, ABC Studios, ABC Daytime, ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN3. Let's just cut to the chase. They own all of ESPN channels, all of them. Lucasfilms, Marvel, Marvel Studios, Pixar, Military History, Vice, the Walt Disney Studios, Times Square. Let me see, what else? It's too much to name. In print, they own Marvel Comics. They own probably looks like 20 to 30 different print platforms. Video games, GameStar, and another one called Rocket Pack. The next one up, Time Warner. The CEO is Jeff Bewkes, Bewkes. His annual salary is $32.5 million. Annual salary. Media assets, television and film, Ascent Health, Adult Swim, Cartoon Network. And again, I'm looking at probably 40, 50, maybe different platforms here. CNN News, CNN US, CNN International, HBO, HBO Films, HBO Latin America, HBO On Demand, Hulu, Turner, all of Warner Brothers, everything under Warner Brothers, CW, TNT, True TV, HBO Sports, just to name a few. Print, they own DC Comics, Time, Time Life, and Life Magazine. Investments, it's so many companies here, I don't even want to read down this list, but it's a pretty extensive list of investments. That means they have their hands in something financially. Video games, Rocksteady, WB, and some other games that I'm not familiar with. Monolith, and I can't read the other ones. They also own Water Tower Music, Warner Brothers, and Time Warner Cable. Comcast, CEO Brian L. Roberts. His annual salary, $40.8 million. They own, or he owns, or his company owns, Bravo, CNBC World, CNBC, MSNBC, NBC, NBC Sports. And again, I'm looking at probably 50, maybe, different outlets. DreamWorks, Fandango, NHL, Sci-Fi Channel, Major League Baseball. I forget what this one is. I know this symbol though. Everything Entertainment. That's what it is. You know, with the little E. Okay. Not to belabor this. They also own Comcast Infinity. Probably where it says ventures, I'm probably looking at maybe 60 different financial investment ventures that they have their hand in. The next one, News Corp, Rupert Murdoch, $22.3 million. Media assets, Fox Fox Business, Fox Life, FXM, Fox Crime, Fox Movies, Fox Classics, Cult TV, National Geographic, Nat Geo Wild, Nat Geo Mundo, Fox Sports, Fox Sports South, Fox for college sports, U Target, all of 20th Century Fox. That means all the movies. Wireless, or in music, Wireless Group and Fox Music. In print, they own probably, it looks like 20 to 30 different print outlets. Bronx Times, Courier Life, HarperCollins Publishers, Time Ledger. It's so many. But when you look at these print ones, you're looking at the parent company. You'd have to actually do the research to look to see who falls under them. Is it the New York Times? Is it Washington Times? Is it, any of the major print media outlets? Do they fall under these? Sony, the president and CEO, his name is Kazuhira, Hirai. His annual salary is only $4.9 million a year. His media assets, he owns or has under his control a bunch of stuff. Sony, everything connected to Sony, Sony Pictures, True Entertainment, True Movies, TriStar. Many of the movies, when you go to the movies and it has the horse with the wings, the Pegasus, TriStar, he runs all of that. Screen Gems, which is, again, has to deal with media, or not media, but movies. Let me see. Music-wise, anything dealing with Sony, that's him. And there's probably 20 to 25 different entities that fall under the music. Non-media, Sony Bank, Sony Creative Software, Investments, Felicia, Olympus, and Vio. Those are the 6 companies that control all of media. They total $430 billion. Comcast, $148.2 billion. Disney, $88.1 billion. National Investments, $43 billion. News Corp, $56 billion. Time Warner, $60.6 billion. And Sony generates $34.1 billion. Okay. I say that to say what? At some point, we have to use some level of common sense. We understand that the society that we live under is a capitalist society. We live under capitalism, and capitalism is global. Capitalism is the driving force behind many of the national and global events that go on. When we look at the images of people, when we look at how stereotypes, how people understand different groups, again, I preface this by saying that the majority of the people are media educated. They're media educated. So how often have you heard Palestinians as a whole and Hamas as synonymous? They're not synonymous. Not all Palestinians support Hamas. That's just a fact. Not all Palestinians support Hamas. All Jews are not Zionist. If you go to almost any media outlet, you'll see groups of Jews who are against Zionism and who support Palestinians. You'll see that. So that's a fact. I said earlier that all black men are connected to criminality. That's stupid. I'm black and I'm not connected to criminality or criminal behavior. So that's obviously not true. My point is the media controls the narrative. and the media is run by 6 major corporations. I said, let's let common sense kick in. Let's let common sense kick in. Do you not think that those 6 CEOs meet together and say, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? What's the narrative? How are we going to spin this? How are we going to use this to make money? I've spoken before on institutions and systems and what those institutions and systems are. Institutions are your various entities in a society that make up pretty much the daily life and resources of a society. So you have your healthcare institution, you have educational institution, you have the judicial system or institution, so on and so forth. All of these work together and in conjunction, in collaboration to create the system. And that system and all those institutions that work under the system all have the same mission: maintain the status quo of power. Maintain the status quo. That's what they do. The other thing that I wanted to touch on, real quick, I'm sorry. When we look at the information that we get in regards to this Palestinian and Israeli situation, have we ever considered that it's an economic situation? That this could be. I'm theorizing here. It could be economically driven, capitalist driven. Why would I say that? We know that in that area, companies have always moved goods through the Suez Canal. The Suez Canal is the main waterway and that companies use to be able to cut through from one area to the next area. They are or have been kicking around the idea of creating a new canal. It's called the Ben Gurion Canal. I believe that's how you pronounce it. I don't know. Gurion. And just a little side note, this Ben Gurion name, supposedly this individual was one of the major founders of Israel, and they want to name the canal after him. But the Egyptians control the Suez Canal. They want to create this Ben Gurion Canal and run it through the area where the Palestinians are. So could it be that this annihilation, this murder, this slaughtering of Muslims is economically driven? Could it be? Of course they hate the Palestinians, and they don't hate the Palestinians for any other reason than the fact that they're Muslim. It's they hate the Muslims to begin with. That's a global, that's a global thing. That's a global thing. But the Israelis dislike the Muslims, period. And history supports that. But this annihilation of the Palestinian people, could it be that they just want to wipe them off of that area to be able to now create this canal that they've been kicking around the idea of creating since, I believe, 1960? This canal, it's a plan to join the Red Sea with the Mediterranean, and it's going to be an alternative to the Suez Canal. Remember, the Egyptians, to my understanding, control the Suez Canal. So the Israelis are looking for a way to cash in on goods being moved from the Red Sea to areas in the Mediterranean. Many decades ago, I'm going to read a little bit to you. The Americans proposed to use nuclear weapons to blast a waterway through the Negev desert, but the plan never progressed. This is why it did not. And why there is some talk about the Ben Gurion Canal again as Israel pushes and destroys Hamas in Gaza. It has been speculated that one of the reasons behind Israel's desire to eliminate Hamas from the Gaza Strip and completely control the Palestinian enclave is to give itself the chance to better explore a dramatic economic opportunity that has been talked about for several decades, but for which peace and political stability in the region is an essential prerequisite. The idea is to cut through the Israeli controlled Negev Desert from the tip of the Gulf of Aqaba, the eastern arm of the Red Sea that juts into Israel's southern tip and southwestern Jordan, to the eastern Mediterranean coast, thus creating an alternative to the Egyptian controlled Suez Canal that starts from the western arm of the Red Sea and passes to the southeastern Mediterranean through the northern Sinai Peninsula. The so-called Ben Gurion Canal Project, which was first envisioned in the 1960s, would, if it were to be actually completed, transform global maritime dynamics by taking away Egypt's monopoly over the shortest route between Europe and Asia. However, any attempt to construct the canal would have to overcome gigantic logistical, political, and funding challenges, which in the current situation makes it seems largely fantastical. We take a look at what has been proposed and its implications theoretically on global trade and geopolitics. Most of this type of information is probably unknown to most people. It's probably unknown or not well understood by most people. I actually had to go and begin to seek this information out. I spoke to, and this goes into the next thing that I want to touch on. I spoke to one of our indigenous scholars on the phone last night, and he's the one who mentioned this to me. He mentioned this to me, which made me then get up and say, you know something, let me do a little research on this. Let me look at it. And I also saw a meme that someone posted on Facebook with the same thing, talking about the same thing. And when I first saw it, I didn't really pay it too much attention. I was like, okay, I didn't know what the Ben Gurion Canal was, and I wasn't really, until the scholar contacted me and mentioned it to me, and I said, okay, this may have some merit. Let me take a look at it. So again, it could be that this war between Israel and Philistine, the Palestinians, is money driven. It could be something to think about, something to kick around. It's important that we as Muslims in the West keep a connection to our indigenous scholarship. And I've said this before and I'll continue to say it. It's important that we embrace our indigenous scholarship. Those brothers who have taken the time, given their blood, sweat, and tears, lost sleep, missed meals, missed parts of their children's bringing up or upcoming, missed time with their spouses in order to learn this deen. In order to learn this deen. It was, the conversation that I had last night was very beneficial. And I, as I have said in the past, I don't produce videos unless I'm inspired. I'm not one of those people that make videos every week or have something to say all the time. I spend more time reading or looking at other people's videos, see what they're saying. But I only produce when I'm inspired. And the conversation that I had last night with the Sheikh, it inspired me. And it made me think about all of the possibilities behind this slaughtering of our brothers and sisters in Philistine. When we talk about and I know that I'm sort of all over the place. This is sort of impromptu. I didn't really give this a framework. So bear with me if you will, please. I talked about the media control over images and what you see and what you don't see. I'm going to read to you from a book that I used to teach in the college here in my city. And this short paragraph is about propaganda and how propaganda works. Public opinion can be swayed by propaganda, spreading information or misinformation to influence people's attitudes or behavior. Propaganda isn't a type of collective behavior, but affects it in several important ways. First, it can create attitudes that will arouse collective outbursts, meaning strikes or riots. Second, propaganda can attempt or succeed in preventing collective outbursts, as when corporations convince employees that job losses are due to a weak economy rather than to offshoring or sending those jobs, outsourcing those jobs somewhere else. Third, propaganda tries to gain followers for a cause, whatever it might be. Propaganda is institutionalized in advertising, political campaign, literature, and government policies. It's conveyed in many ways. The mass media, social media, political speeches, religious groups, rumors, and symbols all play a part in that. That's propaganda. So the common man does not own the means to produce mass media. We don't produce that. We consume it. And because we don't control it, and many of us don't think deeper than what's being presented, the narrative of whatever the case may be is controlled. And I think that the bottom line for it is economics. It's money. Money is almost often at the root of issues. One of my professors in school, he always used to tell me, if you want to know the agenda of something, follow the money. Follow the money, and you'll find out exactly who's who and what's what. Follow the money. I have found that to be largely true. Can there be other factors that are involved? Absolutely. We're not talking, binary application. It's not, one or the other. It's not, just black and white. You can have multiple variables in why something is being done. But I think many times the asl, the foundation of most of the happenings and the conflicts in the world are for economic gain. Think about the military-industrial complex. Think about mass incarceration in African-American men. Think about African-American men being a product that funds or is a product of the private prison systems. Private prison systems, for profit private prison systems. Well, how do you make a profit from that? You got to have bodies in prison. So what does that mean? The cops got to go lock people up. When the cops lock them up, they go see the judge. The judge sends them to private prisons. There have been so many academic papers, as well as newspaper articles and things that I've read that talk about companies, these private prisons, threatening to sue the government because they're not locking enough people up. And that messes with the money. Think about that. Private prisons threatening to sue the government because they're not locking up enough people and upkeeping their end of the bargain to keep their prisons full. Who's the recipient of this? Who's the bearer of burden in this economic perverted marriage that they have? It's African Americans. We're the ones that are being primarily locked up. We make up 13% of the U.S. population, but make up 40 to 50%, last time I checked, of the prison system. So the math isn't mathing. Doesn't make sense. If you understand the system and you understand systemic and institutional racism and oppression, then it does make sense. But outside of that, it's mind-boggling. Keep in mind, when you're watching the news and you're watching this Palestinian-Israeli thing unfold, there's a good chance that there is a hidden agenda or a hidden chunk of information that's being kept from you. Ask yourself, how many of you had heard about this Ben Gurion Canal even being a thing? How many of you have heard of it? How many of you knew its importance? Take the time to go read on it. Take the time to go look at it. And I would ask my indigenous students of knowledge and our scholars to stay on top of this, to keep us abreast. Tell us as Americans, as minorities in America, how we should be moving and understanding these different issues. How we should be moving, how we should understand them. I'm sorry, I know my glasses are glaring. I don't know how to fix that either. Anyway, refer back to the scholars. There we go. Hopefully that's better. I hope it's not too dark. Refer back to the scholars. And refer back to those people who are experts in their respective fields of study. And sort of piece and put it together for yourself. Critically think. Think analytically and critically when you hear new information. The Quran tells us that when we hear, as Muslims, alhamdulillah, when we get information or hear news, especially from the wicked ones, what do? We verify it. We don't take it at face value. We don't take it as haqq just because we see it on TV, or just because we hear it on the radio, or we see it on Facebook, or we see it in the news. Verify. Figure it out. Find out how much of it is true and how much of it is garbage. Oftentimes, the way this system will work, the left hand will be doing this while the right hand is doing something totally different. And they want you to look at this hand while this is the hand that you should be looking at. We tend to get caught up in emotions. Things happen and we become emotional. And we don't stop and we don't think critically and say, well, wait a minute. Maybe this is a little bit of smoke and mirrors. Maybe this is not everything that is cracked up to be. Maybe there's more to the story. This is the sociologist in me that makes me want to research, that makes me want to look and find out what's really going on with some of these things. So I'm going to leave it at that for now. I hope this was beneficial. And remember, all Palestinians do not support Hamas. All Jews are not Zionists. All blacks are not criminals. This is just nonsense that has been pushed and promoted by the media to divide and conquer. That's another thing. I'm sorry. A lot of this race stuff is divide and conquer tactics. Something that is, I think, more salient to the elite is class status. More so than race. Class status. Staying elite. Keeping their elite status. Regardless of skin color. Keeping the elite status. I would guide everyone to read a book by a sociologist from the 50s. His name is C. Wright Mills. He wrote a book called Power Elite. Power Elite by C. Wright Mills. If you Google it, you can get it from Amazon. You can get it from maybe half price books. I found it in the library. You can take it out of the library and read it. But it'll give you a good understanding of how the power elite in the society, how they move, where they come from, how they maintain their status over everyone else, how their kids go to school together, how they vacation in the same spots, how they may put up one image of this, this person is the enemy or that person is the enemy, but behind closed doors they're playing golf and smoking cigars. Go back and look at old pictures of Donald Trump and his kids with the Clintons and their kids when they were little, hanging out. Go look back at some of the old pictures, but all of a sudden, they're enemies. All of a sudden, they're enemies when it becomes time for this political, running for president and all of that. Do you really think that they've been friends for all those years? Their kids grew up together, and wham bam, out of nowhere, they're enemies. Again, they use tactics to keep us, at each other's throats and thinking about the wrong things, watching the left hand while the right hand is doing something totally different. Anyway, I will leave it at that. Hopefully I was clear. I hope everything that I said makes sense. And last message to the Muslims in the West: support your indigenous scholarship. Support your students of knowledge, which I am not. Support your various students in your localities and your scholars. It's important that you do that. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.